Hear It presents Seven Deadly Sins on the Same Street by Brian Coughlin. Of the good reasons to drink to Paddy, the best is, having him around does you good. Some of this story Paddy told me. Some I knew. The rest I later learned. Or at least I believe it. The story begins with the breaking of dawn over Garden Street. Paddy stood at the beginning of the street as yellow morning light lifted the curtain of night. 7 stops, Paddy thought. 7 stops before sunset. It's going to be a long day. A long day indeed. 7 homes, 3 and 4, were set to be seen. Paddy was a snake removal specialist. He inspected homes, yards, and fences for both serpentry and their points of entry. He was well known on Garden Street. He grabbed the canvas work bag and steel snake hook from his truck. The first house of the day, simple and clean though it was, had plenty of places for a snake to hide. Paddy knocked at the door. While he waited, he listened closely to the morning and looked down at the porch. The whole of his attention was on the darkness between the floorboards. The darkness moved. The door flew open. Before Paddy could say his usual good-natured greeting, a young woman who was not the homeowner stepped out and around him. "Excuse us," the seducer said from inside the house. "Late nights and early mornings. Come on in, Paddy." "Thank you, sir," Paddy said. "The morning is particularly beautiful, don't you think?" "Not so beautiful as last night," the seducer said, "but I'm a better judge of evenings than mornings." They walked through the seducer's home, which was, in Paddy's eyes, quite empty. There were plenty of things, but little of life. In stark contrast to the sterile furnishings, a belt lay coiled on a side table. "I see your eyes," the seducer said. "Do I spy a touch of envy?" "Just a bit of admiration," Paddy said. "That is a unique belt." "I had it specially made," the seducer said. "Hard to unclasp. Not what you'd expect, right? A guy like me should have an easier way to unfasten his belt, but I like to challenge the girl a bit. It's better when they have to work for it, to prove they're interested. There is nothing like being desired." "I'll have to take your word for it," Paddy said. "I spend my days catching critters, and more often than not, I'd prefer they not have much desire for me." "Paddy, you have to join me," the seducer said. "Tonight, when you're finished, let's go out, you and me, and find some company. You could use a night out." "I'll have to see how the day goes," Paddy said. "I may be up to my neck in snakes." "Oh yes, the snakes," the seducer said. "They've made a few of my guests uncomfortable. They seem to be everywhere." The seducer led Paddy to the backyard. The grass stood tall enough to hide the snakes, but shadows slithered in nearly every corner of the yard. "Look at all of them," the seducer said. "You can't take a step without them all around you. I like my place to feel welcoming, and I should be the only snake allowed. So, how do we get rid of them?" Paddy put on his gloves and walked through the yard, scooping up the occasional snake for a quick examination before tucking them away in his bag. "Just garters," Paddy said. "They aren't dangerous, but they're breeding." "Well, that makes sense," the seducer said. "Everything here is set up for breeding. Maybe I should have a less desirable love nest." Paddy smiled but continued, "I can clear them out. They're nesting at night under your porch, then coming out to feed during the warm day. I can seal the porch up and find any other cracks they're getting through." "Sounds good. They've been making my skin crawl," the seducer said. "So hey, Paddy, what do you say? What about you and I hitting the town together tonight?" Paddy felt the loneliness and need for acceptance at the heart of the request. He also understood friendship was more effective than companionship as a remedy. "Company would be welcome," Paddy said, "but I'd find more camaraderie having a few beers and watching the game. Give the belt a night off." Paddy saw a change in the seducer's face as his old friend Jimmy appeared. His smile was different, like a memory, and he was different, like a memory too. "You know, I'd love to watch the game," Jimmy said. "That'd be great. Better, maybe." "Better," Patty said. I'll see you when my day is through. He departed. 6 stops, Patty thought. 6 stops left before sunset. The morning sun burned red on the second house as Patty approached. He noted the fence, which was high with pointed peaks but not deeply dug into the dirt. When he knocked at the door, he heard an angry hiss from the backyard. It's about time, the advocate said as she opened her door. I don't have all day, you know. No, ma'am, Patty said, and I didn't mean to keep you waiting. I have to clear the street in order so no snakes slip past me. Yes, she said. I have court this morning, so let's get a move on. On they went. The house was fortified in all directions, every window sealed tight, every nook and cranny filled day and night. There was not a shadow with all the light. I saw them, the advocate said, on my security cameras. I see them constantly. I want them exterminated. Wherever their nest is, burn it out or whatever you have to do. Just get it done or I'll do it myself. I don't think fire will be necessary, Patty said. The snakes do as snakes do. Their only sin is being in the wrong place. Well, I have a shovel and my cameras can see when there's one out in the open in my yard, the advocate said. The best defense is a good offense, but I'm tired of having to kill them myself. I understand, ma'am, Patty said. Let me take a look to see what I can do. Patty walked through the advocate's backyard and noticed the blinking red light on the security camera. The snakes easily slipped in and out under the tall but not dug-in fence. Patty figured the fence likely protected the snakes from predators. The yard was a safe resting place during the day, so long as the shovel-wielding advocate was not at home. Well, the good news is you don't have a nest on your property, Patty said upon re-entering the house. I can clear out what's here pretty quickly, but you either need a new fence that's buried into the ground, or I can dig a ditch around the base and bury steel mesh. It won't look as nice, but it'll keep them out. Do it right away, she said. I don't care about the cost. I want a safe home. Patty went to work and dug for most of the morning. He buried the steel mesh and attached it to the fence. He didn't bother with the snakes in the yard till he'd finished with the fence. They were easier to remove when boxed in. The advocate came out just as Patty finished. She said, I don't like feeling unsafe in my own home. Is it done? Yes, ma'am, Patty said, safe and sound. I did an extra inspection as I finished to ensure there weren't any cracks or gaps in your foundation that a snake might get through, and everything was perfect. Good, she said. I apologize if I was a bit short with you this morning. The snakes have affected my nerves. No apology necessary, Patty said. Snakes are unsettling, even when you're used to them like I am. I find it's best to take a moment when things are cleared to let one improved thing improve another. Sometimes, when the stress is less in one place, you feel it in every place. The advocate looked out at her now safe backyard. You have a good rest of your day, Carolyn, Patty said. Carolyn sat in peace on her back porch as Patty headed to the next home on his list. 5 stops, Patty thought. 5 stops left before sunset. More, the next home seemed to say as Patty approached. More and more and more. Patty knocked and the door opened like a gaping maw. Good morning, ma'am, Patty said. I'm here to see to the snakes. Yes, she said. Her voice was thin and hungering. The snakes have become a nuisance. They help keep other pests out of my garden, but there are simply too many, too many. Ah, yes, your beautiful garden. I remember it well, Patty said. It's nice to talk with someone who appreciates the benefits of snakes. Well, my garden is my baby, and it needs feeding, the gardener said. I can barely walk out there without a snake slithering underfoot. Understandable, Patty said. Might I take a look? Please do, the gardener said. When you do, would you mind feeding my plants? They haven't had nearly as much to eat as they need. The backyard sloped away from the house toward a pool of standing water against the back fence. The water was dark and still, an abyss that could never be filled. A variety of overgrown plants lined the edges of the fence. Are you sure it needs more food? Patty said. A little pruning might be more beneficial. Of course you don't listen, she said. No one listens. Even if I'm the one with the beautiful garden, what do I know? It isn't like I created my own formula of plant food, except that I did, and still everyone thinks they know better than me. Well, I meant no offense, ma'am, Patty said. Your garden is quite a sight, I must say, and it has cheered my day. Sensing hope he would help her water her plants, the gardener said, It needs just a bit more feeding, just a bit more, along the sides and back, if you would be so kind. Just a bit more? Of course, Patty said. I trust your opinion. I must say I would be grateful for a few tips for my own garden. How often do you feed yours? Patty fed the plants and inspected the yard as the gardener told him at length and quite breathlessly her many and varied techniques. Her plant food was specially formulated to keep every shrub, bush, and flower luscious and full. She went into great detail and delighted in Patty's attentiveness, which he gave even as he removed the extraordinary number of snakes slithering around her yard. When he finished, Patty sat for a few minutes more and listened as she told him the secret to her plant food was the regular feeding schedule. Feeding a garden the right way isn't about doing less work, but more, she said. It can be a lot of work, a lot of worry, but it's worth it. Indeed it is, Patty said, though we aren't the only ones who think so. Snakes love all the worms, slugs, and occasional little rodents that inhabit beautiful gardens. The standing water at the back also brings in frogs and the like, which are snake delicacies. I know, the gardener said. The water is beautiful, but it also makes it look so empty. Maybe, if you don't mind, just a bit more food? Of course, though, I don't see emptiness in the water. I see substance or weight. Its beauty lasts longer than the plants, which have to return every year. Patty began to feed the plants again, but as he did, the gardener said, Well, maybe not too much. With those words, a bit of Michelle, her true self, bloomed. Of course, Michelle, Patty said. Patty collected his things and hauled his increasingly heavy bag out of her yard. Michelle asked, I know the snakes will return, so would you be able to come back every few weeks to clear them from my garden? Well, I would be delighted, Patty said, especially if you'd be willing to share a few more tips. The house's appetite was sated as Patty left. 4 houses remained, 2 and 2, before the day was through. 4 stops, Patty thought. 4 stops left before sunset. Patty's neck strained as he took in the next house on his list, looking from the steps at the bottom to the spires at the top. He was not accustomed to such luxury, but he could hear in the grass others had grown quite comfortable. He knocked. The door swung open and the banker appeared. He was checking his watch as he said, You're late, Patty. Time is the one thing that can't be bought. Let's get a move on. Of course, sir, Patty said. I'm sorry for being late. I need to clear the whole street in order to ensure the snakes don't come back, and there sure are a heck of a lot of snakes around here. No kidding, the banker said. Before they could continue, 2 young boys with a kite ran past toward the backyard. The empty-handed boy said, Can I have a turn too? The boy with the kite did not respond. The banker yelled after them, Son, let your friend have a turn. You have to share. Patty smiled and said, Rambunctious pair. They must be excited to have the yard clear of snakes so they can get back to their kite. Oh yes, the banker said. They have been eagerly awaiting your arrival, as have I. I have a meeting tomorrow morning and need to finish revising my will. Your will, Patty echoed with his hand to his heart. I'm sorry to hear it. I didn't realize you weren't feeling well. Oh no, the banker said. Nothing so dire. Just making a few adjustments to avoid some taxes. They tax you for dying these days. The banker led Patty to the backyard, which contained a handful of only the very best snakes, as if the neighborhood's finest serpents all gathered there to mingle. The banker's son darted across the yard with his kite, which rose into the air and danced in the sky. His friend watched. Son, the banker said, let him have a turn. In a minute, the boy yelled back, ignoring his father. I swear, the banker said to Patty, if that boy doesn't learn to share, I won't give him a dime of inheritance. Then, to his son, Okay, your turn is up. The banker's son dropped his head and, with as much indignity as he could muster, gave the spool to his friend, who lost control of the kite and let it drop to the ground. The banker's son stood in silence while his friend rewound the spool of thread and prepared the kite for another flight. Paddy scooped up a snake near the banker's son. He watched his friend struggle to relaunch the kite. "Seems he doesn't have your touch for launching the kite," Paddy said. "Well, I'm better at it," the banker's son said. "I know more tricks, and he should watch because I'm good. He doesn't always share his stuff when I'm at his house, so why should I? It isn't fair." "Indeed, it isn't," Paddy said, "especially when you know the technique better. What tricks do you know?" "I don't know. Nothing fancy," the banker's son said. "I'm just good at it. I let out the string and pull the right way." I know a good trick for flying a kite," Paddy said. "Would you and your friend like to hear it?" The boys handed Paddy the kite, and he said, "Whichever way it's pointed, when you pull against the wind is the way the kite is going to go. So the trick to launching a kite is to pull when it's pointed up." Paddy let the kite float up a little, feeling for the wind and giving the string little tugs when the kite pointed to the sky. Before it took fully to the sky, he pulled it back down. "Here," Paddy said, handing it to the friend. "Why don't you try?" And to the banker's son he said, "You have a better grip for smaller hands when you launch it, so can you help him hold it the way you do?" The boys took off across the yard, and the kite flew high and far as the friend held the spool. "Woo! Look at it go!" the banker's son cheered. "Turn your hand side to side to make it dance." The boys laughed and played while Paddy finished clearing the yard of snakes and gathered his things. The banker stepped outside to review Paddy's work and smiled at the boys sharing the kite. "That's better," he said. "Yes, sir," Paddy agreed. "I find joy is better when it's shared." "And the yard?" the banker asked. "Are we all clear?" "All clear," Paddy said. "You didn't have any nests, just a few daily visitors." "Outstanding," the banker said. "I always like doing business with you, Paddy, because you're fair. You never try to overcharge me. I don't suppose you do taxes, do you?" "I'm afraid not," Paddy said. "I don't know much about taxes and wills and the like. I don't have any kids, so whatever I have when I go, little it may be, will go to charity. They might tax me for dying, but I will die giving." "Ah, charitable contributions," the banker said. "I should look a little more into those. The tax deductions could help." "And your final act will always be a positive one," Paddy said. "No one can ever take that away from you." "Quite right," the banker said. He watched the kite fly in the sky, and the version of himself as a boy who loved kites emerged. "I'll be on my way, Danny," Paddy said, "though, if you don't mind me saying, the taxes will still be there tomorrow, but the kite is flying today." Paddy left to the sound of Danny joining the boys as they reached for the heavens. 3 stops, Paddy thought. 3 stops left before sunset. Paddy felt eyes on him as he approached the next house. The blinds in the window to his left rustled. Someone peeked through and, recognizing they saw one another, immediately closed the gap. The snakes beneath the window hissed suspiciously at the sound. Before Paddy could knock, the door opened and a young woman appeared. "Come in right away, please," the snoop said. "Inside before anyone sees." "Sees?" Paddy asked. "Never mind that," the snoop said. "You've been through some of the other houses on the street today. I saw you from my window. What are their houses like? Are they nicer than mine? I bet they are." "I wouldn't say any nicer," Paddy said. "You have a lovely home yourself." "But what are their homes like?" she asked. The snoop grabbed a pair of binoculars, which were sitting on a table next to her front window, and peeked through her blinds. "I apologize, ma'am," Paddy said. "I was more focused on their snakes than their homes. I should have paid more attention. I should see to your yard as well." "Right," the snoop said, still peeking through the blinds. "You were just in that fat cat's house across the street. What a show-off. Some people." As Paddy inspected the snoop's yard, she stood on the back porch and asked question after question about the other homes on Garden Street. "Do you know," she said, "my next-door neighbor, Mr. Champion of Everything, has so many trophies he has to buy special trophy cleaner? I saw it the other day. He helped me carry some things to my car at the store, and he had a big jug of it." "Well, that was rather kind of him to help you carry your things," Paddy said. It's good to see someone go out of their way for someone else, and that's a good neighbor to have. I wish I was strong, the Snoop said. Some people have all the luck. The Snoop's yard wasn't particularly full of snakes, as if they too were looking for greener pastures. Patty cleared the few snakes from her garden and checked for any entry points in her fence and foundation. Everything looks great, Patty said. I was careful of your beautiful garden as I cleared the snakes. And the snakes, the Snoop asked, are they good ones? I bet that banker across the street had nicer ones. Patty smiled and said, he doesn't have any snakes now. He paid me to take them away. So you're off to the champion's house next, the Snoop asked. I bet it's filled with all his accomplishments. I wish I was good at things like him. Some people have all the luck. What a show-off. You mentioned he was a gentleman the other day, Patty said. At the very least, he took notice of you, and that was kind. There can never be enough of that in the world, regardless of where it originated. So at least he was kind. Yes, she said, he was. For the first time since Patty arrived, the Snoop stopped looking outward, and Marguerite appeared. Yes, she said again. That was nice. Sometimes, Patty said as he made his way, the best part of a day is a smile from the right person. Let me know if the snakes return, and I'll come right back, Marguerite. 2 stops, Patty thought. 2 stops left before sunset. The 6th house on his list rumbled rather than hissed. Snakes boldly took their positions on both sides of the house and were loud in their anticipation. They bumped and banged against the house like feet stomping on bleachers. The crowd roared as Patty ascended the stairs. Patty, come on in, the champion said as he opened his door. Good afternoon, champ, Patty said. Sorry I'm getting here so late in the day. No worries, the champion said. You arrived at the perfect time. I could use some help reinforcing a shelf. Would you mind giving me a quick hand before you clear my yard? I'd be happy to, Patty said. The champion showed Patty the shelf in question, one of several that covered a whole wall of the living room. The shelves were lined with trophies, medals, awards, and mementos from an accomplished life. This one is sagging from the weight, the champion said. I need a metal bracket to keep it up. Or I'll have to start losing on purpose so I don't get so many of these. Patty held the bracket and shelf in place as the champion anchored it more securely. Once they finished, the champion took a step back with Patty to appraise the wall. He asked, What do you think? It's a good bracket, Patty said. The shelf shouldn't sag anymore. The champion was silent after Patty answered, as if waiting for Patty to continue and compliment the magnificence of the trophy display. Instead, Patty asked, Should I go check the yard? Patty walked through the grass in the middle of the yard. Bushes and shrubs lined both sides. They shook and shimmered in anticipation. A snake darted out across the yard. Patty tried to grab it, but it was too quick for him and made it into the bushes on the other side safely. Before Patty could go after it, another snake slithered across the yard. So it went, 1 or 2 snakes at a time crossing the yard, sometimes escaping Patty's grasp and other times not so lucky and getting bagged. It took time and a great deal of sweat, but Patty succeeded in bagging the snakes until only one remained. The final snake was so fast, so squirmy, it took Patty a full 10 minutes to finally catch it. It sat atop the other snakes in the bag, which seemed to hold it up, allowing it to rest at the top of the pile as the best of them. The champion carried a hefty and much appreciated jug of water when he came outside to check on Patty and the yard. He said, Well done, Patty. Thank you for the effort. I grabbed the first couple I saw a few weeks ago, and they were tough to catch, even for me. All in a day's work, Patty said, and the day is almost done. Could I ask one more favor? The champion said. Give me a second set of eyes to see if the shelf bracket is straight. My level says it's fine, but I swear it looks off. Patty checked the bracket and the distance between the shelves on each end. Everything is aligned, anchored properly, and level. Huh, the champion said with a shake of his head. It just seems off. Sometimes, Patty replied, our eyes get so used to something being wrong we don't recognize when it's right. I'm sure you're right, the champion said. I know this kind of thing shouldn't matter, but I want to be remembered, and remembered for my accomplishments and my talent. You would know better than I, Patty said, though your neighbor mentioned you helped her with her groceries and were very kind. I admire that. You're a decent man, and it seems you're known for it. I didn't think she'd mention that to anyone, the champion said. Thank you. The champion turned away from his trophy display and looked out the window at his neighbor's house. I was helping her with heavy bags of sod, the champion said. She might need help spreading it. A little help and a kind word can go a long way, Peter, Patty said. He departed for his final appointment while Peter dropped by his neighbor's house to offer his exceptional assistance. One stop, Patty thought. One stop left before sunset. At the end of Garden Street stood a barely standing house. Neglect lived in the windows, the cracked siding, and the patchy, uncut grass of the yard, which was so thick with snakes the ground moved in ripples and waves. A long end to a long day awaited. Patty knocked, and a bookish man opened the door. The man was me. I lived in the house at the end of the street, and was Patty's last appointment. I lived a very secluded life, holed up working on a book I was certain was destined for literary greatness, so long as I didn't fall prey to the same mistakes others made. Patty, I said, did we have an appointment today? It must have slipped my mind. I need to keep better track of my appointments. Come on in. Patty stepped over an empty pizza box as he entered a room littered with garbage, which had only a few narrow trails through the forest of refuse. Sorry, I didn't have a chance to straighten up, I said as I moved a few crumpled pieces of paper from one table to another. The only gleaming white spot in the house was the blank computer screen, and even that was nearly covered by the piles of notebooks surrounding it. Hard at work on the book? Patty asked. Indeed, I said, and repeated, indeed, all day, every day. It is the whole of my focus. Everything else needs to fall away so I can finish. Amazing dedication, Patty said. No doubt it will be exceptional. How far along are you? Oh, I haven't written any of the actual book yet, I said. I've gone deeper into planning than ever before, though. I'll need to get some more notebooks soon. All these words and no writing, Patty asked. Well, it has to be perfect, I said. I have to have every moment, every word prepared. I can't make the mistakes others have. A masterpiece is meant to be perfect, so it needs a perfect beginning, middle, and end. All the tendons and sinews between the perfect moments must be perfect. I have to know where I'm going so I can properly foreshadow, even in the littlest pieces of the story, the single words that, when reread, will alter the reader's understanding of the book and the world. My efforts can't be wasted. I've seen what's out there. I know what wasted effort looks like. As Patty collected dozens of snakes and cleared 3 nests, I continued, I can see the pitfalls, you know. I can see where other people have gone wrong. You met my neighbors, right? The scumbag at the other end of the street who's sleeping his way through town, or the angry psycho living next door to him? There are so many ways I can go wrong. I can't go wrong like they have. It would infect my writing. I want my writing to be full of truths. If I make their mistakes, I'll fail. I'll fail like they have. Patty had his hands full with the snakes, so while he listened and heard me, he didn't respond. I have so much to say, so much to write, I said. If I can just finish preparing, I can finally start, and the truest words will flow. Patty, finally finished with his task, said, I look forward to reading it. You've always had interesting ideas and, at least to me, important things to say. Thank you, Patty, I said. Have you caught all the snakes? There were so many. That there were, Patty said. Your yard was the busiest today. Multiple nests and, well, you saw all of them. I'll give you my direct number the next time you see a snake so I can take care of it before it gets out of hand. Story of my life, I said. It was an interesting day today, Patty said. There were so many snakes here, but after 6 other houses and so many other snakes, I got more comfortable and quicker with grabbing them. When there's just 1 or 2 snakes, they'll surprise you. They'll unnerve you. Snakes are like that, but after you've handled the first few, shown yourself you can handle it, the rest are easier. That's advice to live by, I said. In that moment, Patty later told me he felt a swell of pity for me. He said, I catch snakes so people are happier in their homes. It isn't glamorous, but when the snakes come around, it's important. I've always thought a good story was important. A good story, a really good one, can help people. I think your stories will make a difference, but only if you write them. Otherwise, well, nothing. What if I fail? What if you never do anything? I thanked Patty and asked if the snakes would return. They might, he said, but if they do, they can be cleared. We know the way. On that day, I believe, Patty showed Garden Street a better way. Patty's labors were at an end. 7 stops before sunset. The 7th was done, and so the sun set.